welcome to today's podcast. We're joined today by Daniel, and yeah, if you could just introduce yourself and a bit about what you do.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks for having me. My name's Daniel. I'm in recovery from alcohol and gambling addiction, and I started Recovolution 4 years ago when I just got into my own early recovery. Recovolution is a addiction recovery platform that really is aimed at connecting the world of recovery. What I found really challenging when I got into recovery was that there was no platform dedicated to recovery. When you've got over 100 million people in recovery worldwide, it's crazy. But COVID had just brought sort of recovery online, and it was a real challenge for us just to facilitate meetings, which I found, again, we were cobbling it together with WhatsApp, Google Drive, PayPal. So I thought, well, how is there no technology that is dedicated to recovery? So
During the pandemic, it was so difficult to get any medical help or any help in general, because we had to socially distance, and there were so many restrictions for such a long time, and that pandemic was impacting people's mental health as well. So it was even more difficult that you couldn't have any in contact help. And I've heard that people have been, they look online and they're scrolling, they're looking for the help that they need, and they just can't find that specific help. It's a general idea of mental health, but it's not something that's catering to what people need. But
yeah, so I think to start with, the thing that you need to surround yourself with in any sort of recovery is like-minded people. And that was I've been to 2 rehabs, and that was a real eye-opener to me, because I was, for the first time, sat talking to people that were just like me, and I thought I was unique in a way that nobody was doing what I was doing. And when you hear people like yourself, that really helped. But there's a good saying that if you want to be a millionaire, surround yourself with 9 millionaires, and you'll be the 10th. And I think if you want strong recovery, surround yourself with people with good recovery, and you'll get good recovery. So I think that was paramount to why I started Recovolution, because I was, you could say I was a high flyer, but I was a high performing alcoholic. I was a VP at a software company, but I was sat at my desk Googling all sorts of things, and I never found it. I never found anything. And I had to lose everything, the will, even the will to live, to get into recovery. And what I wanted to do with Recovolution was give people years of their life that, I no longer sort of had. So yeah, with the AI, what we've done is we partnered with Mind Nudger, and we are delivering a experiential sort of recovery journey. It's not so Recovolution is not a crisis point solution. It is to help people that are in that discovery phase, maybe family, loved ones, and it's to help people coming out of care. So what the AI is it's essentially a pocket recovery guide, and it learns from you, and it starts to change the way that you think, because addiction is all in the mind. So I thought I was a piece of shit. I thought this, I thought that, and it starts to challenge your perception of the world. Because like I say, I've been to 2 rehabs. They're great when you're in there. They are not going to save you. Like, recovery is a journey, and it can speed up that process a little bit, but really you want to be changing your habits, the way that you think. And unfortunately, a lot of the way that we think has been predetermined in our adolescent years, when we don't even know that, we are forming a perception of the world. And so to really challenge the way that you think at, my age, it does take some time, but
At sixth form as well, I did psychology and I'm doing it now at university. And you learn about something called tabula rasa, which is like the template that you build. You're born with like a blank slate, and from an early age, the building blocks are put into place. And to change the way you think, the way you perceive things, it can be a very difficult journey.
yeah. And for me, addiction was fear. It was fear of the world. It was fear of what people thought of me. It was the expectations that I put on myself. And really, when you go back and you look at it, that's all it is. You can see through it. Like, um, I thought, well, I mean, I ended up in prison, so I had nothing left to lose, nothing left to fear. And that was the most freeing thing, ironically. It wasn't being released from prison, it was that I had nothing left to lose, I had nothing left to fear. And that was really freeing,
Yeah.
because you can start again. And that's just what I did. And what I do with my children now is I don't try and rank them against other students or this and that. It's like, just find something that you enjoy doing in life and just do that. That's it.
And comparison, I think they say, is like the worst thing, like making comparisons between you and the people around you. And yeah, could you tell us more about how Recovolution works?
Yeah, so we're predominantly so we're a technology, right? So we are the sum of all of our parts. So anybody in recovery, whether it's an Alcoholics Anonymous group or a charity or a big organization like Change Grow Live, they can get set up on Recovolution, and they can bring about awareness to what they're doing, and you can easily find them. So I think if you're as bad as I was, you do need some sort of intervention, most probably. Like, I needed to be detoxed. I was detoxed in prison, I was detoxed in rehab. Like, it does help. um what Recovolution will give you is a community. And I think that's, so I live in the northwest of England at the minute, and outside of going to meetings, it's very hard to meet people in recovery. And yet there are millions of people in recovery. But we just play on a different playground. So we're not going out Friday, Saturday night and getting abused. It's what I think, everybody's got some sort of spiritual path. And I think addiction just led me off that spiritual path. And I think recovery guides you back onto it. So what keeps me well is helping other people, thinking about other people, being around, other people. And your experience is different because you're present, which is weird. For me, it was really weird. And like listening to music and watching even like watching films, it was like, wow, I'm here. And luckily my children were really young when I got into recovery. So they've become a real big part of my life, because I can just give myself to them when I have them. And it's amazing to see young children in the present moment, because they're not thinking about tomorrow, or they're not thinking about money, or this and that. So you can just observe. It's beautiful. It really is. But what you do need is, I've had some great sponsors, I've had some great mentors. Obviously, a few people in Recovolution are in recovery, and we look after each other.
Does the app or the website connect people who are struggling, or and
Yeah,
then is it just that they're connecting online, like over a call, or are there also like events that you guys are doing? Because I've seen things as well where there's like women events where people are, like I think it's like the Girlhood Club or something, and they organize things in London, and I think there's one where it's like an alcohol-free club.
yeah. So again, because we're the technology, we enable any. So like the sober butterflies are a little bit like what you've said there. So the sober butterflies they're really growing across the UK, in terms of like sober living. Um, so anybody can go to our platform and create a group. They can create an event, and so it's like having WhatsApp and Meetup and all these technologies, but it's just dedicated to recovery. But the good thing about our platform is it's free, and it's anonymous. So if you want to create a profile name, I use my name on the platform because it enables people to find me. But I've been with people where they're going to try and go back to work. They're going to go and try and go back to their living environment, which is really difficult, because one of the key things in recovery is being honest. And you have to go back and say, oh, I went to rehab for mental health or this and that. Well, you're a recovering alcoholic, or you're a recovering drug addict, whatever. So I think it is tough, but if you want to get on a Facebook group, you can't, because all your pals are going to see you've joined this Facebook group. So with Recovolution, you remain anonymous, and it's we don't advertise, we don't productize our members. In fact, we anonymize their details, because we're not interested in selling directly to them. So when I conceptualized Recovolution, it was like, we're not a charity, so we had to make money. So the way that we make money is we've got a well-being platform. So if people want to subscribe to our well-being platform, they can. And about 20% of our members do, but it's a choice. And that's basically provides the money to be able to keep the platform free for everybody else.
And I think it kind of reminds me of, have you heard of like the Big Help Out? And it joins communities together. And I was reading up and I saw that, they provide the opportunity for anybody to organize their own events or bring people from the community together. And, like you said, that, bringing people together and, organizing your own thing, I think that can be so important for people who are, going through recovery. And it's so good that Recovolution gives them, the privacy that they need, like because there is a lot of stigma around mental health and, recovery. Um, were there any stigmas you faced in your experience?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I kept my addiction hidden, until the day I went into my first rehab. I was still working when I went in. It I thought my life would be over if I admitted I was an addict, and I lived with that for quite some time. It's not something you can go to your employer and say. It's not something you can go to your wife and say. It's not really something that you can go to your family and say. And I sort of the the signs were there, but nobody thought I was an alcoholic because I had a job, and I was still, So when I went into rehab, my dad brought my eldest son down, and he was only about 4 or 5 at the time, to London, because I was working in London a lot. I had a flat in London, and he saw he saw that I was really, really struggling, and so he took my son. He got the train back to Manchester, and then he drove all the way back to London. He came into my flat, he was on the couch when I woke up, and he said, "Will you go into a rehab?" And the next day, and that very day, we were driving to a rehab. And the way that I handled that with work is I just said I had anxiety and depression, which is what the doctor had sort of said. So my dad took me, yeah, he drove me, and I had to go to a detox clinic first. So which we neither of us knew. So I turned up at this place called Hafen Wen in Wrexham, and it was the most depressing place. I mean, I've been, like I said, I've been to prison twice, but the people in that facility, oh, their lives and their, it was really sad. It was really sad. Like, I felt really privileged because I'd bypassed the system, really, because I was, you have to be detoxed to go to rehab. These people were, when you hear their backstories, it was really sad. It was really, really sad. So yeah, so but at the time, my parents didn't know much about addiction. Like, my wife was even worse. Like, she was just like, stop drinking. And it was only when I went to my second rehab, and they joined a peer-led group, that they started to really understand addiction a bit more. So they have been so good, and they do see it as an illness, which it is. It's a mental illness. Nobody chooses to be an addict. Trust me, it's the worst. But the only way that you can really help someone is to be compassionate with them, regardless of how they are. And I've since been to prison a couple of times, and that, because I was on a detox wing, was really humbling. Because again, I was the outlier, right? My parents were really loving, and I had a good background, and I've got a brain which should enable me to keep to get a good job and stuff like that. Whereas the care homes that people had lived grown up in, and it's really like, prison's not full of pedophiles and murderers, right? It's full of petty thieves. And well, where I was, I mean, it was quite a hardcore prison I went to, but there was one guy, you go into like a holding cell, and this guy was a homeless guy, and he was in prison for stealing food. The guy couldn't, like, that's not a crime. Like, he's gone from, living rough under a bridge to having a bed, having food. He did have an addiction. He had he got his methadone in prison, which they give to 80 odd percent. I mean, there was a couple of drink drivers in with me. Most people are addicted to meth. You get, I mean, the amount of drugs that are just flying around in prison is insane. Like, you can get weed, you can get, spice is the worst one in prison. But yeah, it was just sad. Just sad.
And it's heartbreaking. Like, there is a lot going on with the economy and the cost of living crisis, and it's so sad that that is the alternative that they have to go for sometimes.
So we think that prison is the option as a society. What society doesn't realize is that, particularly on a drug wing, it's costing about £50,000 a year to keep somebody inside. So, and I think that's probably above what most people earn. So we're spending as a society £50,000 per person to lock somebody up. It's an insane waste of money.
Yeah, and that could have been invested into helping people not get to that stage.
That's
Um,
where it has
yeah.
the journey.
Can we talk more about Recovolution and what other amazing features there are for people to access?
Yeah, so what I found is when I started Recovolution, I'd just come out of prison the second time, and I was like a battery on charge, and I wanted to learn about things that were going to keep me well. So I was researching nutrition, exercise, sleep. I was looking at Buddhism. I was looking at loads and loads of different things. And I couldn't find a central place to find all this information. So I started to blog about it. And so what we've done with Recovolution is create a library, like a content hub for people to, it's not the doom and gloom type content. It's in, you could be a day in recovery or you could be 10 years in recovery and you'll find something that will help you on our platform. So that was one thing I wanted to do. And then it was the community aspect that took the most time to build. So we wanted to build a messenger that was secure. We wanted to build a way that you could connect, you could create meetings, you could promote what you're doing. So we basically brought together, you can connect your Zoom, so you can do online meetings. So we basically brought together the way that people typically connect in recovery, and then we built a well-being hub, which has got meditation, yoga, exercise, nutrition, and breath work. And like the people that I work with are just amazing people. Some are in recovery, some not, because a lot of people that are in that space live really spiritual lives, and that's basically what people in recovery do. And then just this year, we launched Recovolution Spaces, which you can think of it almost like a LinkedIn business type page for any organization to then be able to get set up on our platform. And the idea is I've always got the person in recovery at heart. And I thought the only thing that I could do was go to the doctor or go to a rehab. But that's about 1% of the things that were available. So if everybody comes onto the platform and lets people know what they can do, that's where you give people the biggest chance of success, because it's not just going to your doctor or going to rehab. You need to find a way, you need to find a purpose. So that it might be a knitting club, it might be a gardening club, it might be, your local charity. There's so much available to you. So we just enable anybody and everyone to be able to get set up on the platform.
Were there any challenges in setting up the platform or like coming up with ideas on what to put on there?
Money is a challenge. We had a really good investor. It's cost us way more than we were expecting to build the platform. It's sad in a way, because you get organizations who get 500 million from the government a year, and that you can see how inefficient they are in terms of the next service provider to get the money, and they spend most of their time trying to raise money. So you can't, it's difficult to, unless you get a private investor. It was difficult because we didn't register as a charity. If we had, I could probably have got access to more funds, but I purposely didn't want to hide behind being a charity, because I wanted the flexibility to be able to make my own decisions and do what I think is right for the human beings coming on.
And it's good because sometimes when people look for help and they see that it's under like a charity's name, they worry about the lack of resources and the lack of support that they might get. Because, with the NHS, with charities, there is a lot of pressure on those services that sometimes it is better to go down the path of like an independent kind of business.
The NHS, honestly, it's horrendous, the NHS. What happens in this country is medtech, because it takes so long to get adopted by the NHS, 95% of medtech leaves and goes to the United States before it's available. And that's what we're doing, because it takes so long to get adopted by it takes on average 17 years to get adopted by the NHS. And the problem with the NHS is, even if you get adopted, that's just by one local trust. Every single county's got a different trust. So yeah, the NHS and the government don't really have a clue with how to solve the problem of addiction. Now, I wouldn't hazard a guess as to how many people go into A&E on a Friday, Saturday night as a result of alcohol or drug abuse, but it's high. And liver disease, heart disease, it's ripping through the country. But it also brings a lot of money in because of the establishments and the tax on alcohol and cigarettes and things. So yeah, it's very difficult in this country to make a difference. And I'm not blaming anybody. Like, it's just the way that the system has been set up. I think most people do care, and most people do want to help, but I think we're shackled with how do we help. And as an example, there's 150 rehabs in this country. There's 17,000 in the US. So it's just a much bigger market for us.
Yeah. And also, I think as well, like, I never heard about these things at school when we'd have like PSHE lessons, or we'd call it tutor time in the morning, where you sit down and they talk to you about important things around the world, or like in your life that you're going to experience, I never heard anything about, recovery with any mental health, or, how addiction can be, because people start drinking at a very early age as well. I remember at school they'd be like, we have a party, you're gonna join us. But there was never warning from places like schools, or, even within my community, you'd hear about, oh, there is somebody struggling, but there's never like enough education for us to hear and learn about it.
Yeah, I've veered very much towards sort of like Eastern culture and Eastern ways of thinking, but in saying that, like, there's a real big addiction problem in India at the minute, but there's 1 billion people there, so that's probably why. But it is difficult, and I think I've actually registered a company called Little Lucian. Little Lucian. So what I want to do once I've got Recovolution is, create an app that brings parents and children together in the right way, because there's absolutely no chance that we can address this at an adult level. You can only address it when people are growing up, to say, look, you don't have to fear things. Don't worry about don't worry so much about your grades and shit like that, because it doesn't matter. Just be happy. Like, that is the fundamental thing in life. Just do what makes you happy and you'll be okay. And we are all okay. Like, we would be okay, but we're ranked and we're this and we're that. And I think we put so much pressure on children, particularly with the way that social media is. It's horrible. And children are horrible. Like, they're bullies, like horrible people. But that's the only way that you can really, I think, address this over, in the long term. And that's what I'd like to do. I'd like to really disrupt, because it's not just me, the alcoholic, who was, like, I wasn't going, in the end, I'd much rather be drinking on my own at home. But it's the people that think going out Friday, Saturday night, you don't realize how much of your life you're wasting. Like, you really don't, because why'd you go out on a Friday night? Because there's pressure, and it's like a valve that you can then just release that pressure. And alcohol changes the way that you think, so you can then be a different human being for a certain period of time. That's sad. Be that person your whole life. And
think it's the same
That
thing with social media as well. Like, somebody's stressed, they sit there and they'll just scroll away their hours and
uh,
hours on their phone. And I think I'm guilty of doing that sometimes. I'm like, had such a difficult day. I'm just gonna sit on my phone. I don't want to deal with anything anymore and just I'm gonna scroll away for a couple hours. And it is a big waste of time and it doesn't heal the difficult day you've had rather than going on a walk or doing something that will actually make you feel better. But there's also like I guess addictions to social media, to sitting there and scrolling that are like I guess a more modern new one that we haven't heard about until more recently, but it's something that parents are being warned of, like your children, like, I don't know if you've heard the term like iPad kids, they're glued to their iPads.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and it is
And
it's a form of addiction, I guess, as well.
I'll be honest, like with when my children were growing up, and they're still growing up, they're 10, 8, and 6 now, but there are times when an iPad is like a pacifier, right? So you can give them an iPad and it will calm them down. It will, because if they're running around being lunatics, you can give them an iPad. But it's really difficult. And I think gaming is difficult. I think what is a real killer is gambling, because you can sit and gamble on your phone. Like I gambled a lot, and in fact, it was the reason that my ex-wife left me, not for the drinking, but for the gambling. And like gambling is real dangerous, because luckily I didn't lose. Like my wife sat down and went through all our banking records, and I'd spent over 100 grand, but I'd won over 100 grand. Now I was call it fortunate, but if you're a gambler and you've got to go to bankruptcy or you've lost all your money, that's far harder than being an alcoholic, where if you stop drinking, you need to repair relationships and you start feeling better. If you're a gambler that's lost everything, it can take a lifetime to get that back. It can literally take a lifetime. So they sort of say that you can lose your life 2 days with gambling, 2 years with cocaine, and 20 years with alcohol, because alcohol takes a much longer time to get the dependency. Cocaine is a lot quicker, but gambling, you could literally lose everything in 2 days. Boom, gone. So it's really, I think it's really scary, and it makes me laugh almost when you sit there, especially now, you watch the football, and half the adverts are gambling adverts in between that, and it's a silent killer. If you look at the suicide rates of people that are killing themselves because of gambling in this country, it's insane. Like,
It's almost like a subconscious thing as well. When you're watching the football and you see these adverts, it's embedding it into our subconscious, like our minds. We're not like we're not aware of it, but like we're watching these adverts and they're popping up on our screens, I guess every 20 minutes. I don't know how often they put them on, but they're also in the background when the players are playing on the pitch. They're literally everywhere now. And yeah, it is scary that that can impact someone.
it's really scary.
Um, it's been amazing hearing about what support you can get from Recovolution and your personal experience. I'm really grateful that you've shared that with me today, and I'm sure, whoever's listening out there will benefit from this.